Hi, everyone. I'm here on Friday for my weekly time with you. And today I wanted to carry on with a series that I started last week, which was about what I learned in med school. So this is going to be my part two because a lot of has happened in the 26 years since I graduated. So, what are the other things that I wish I had learned? I'm going to begin number one with Alzheimer's. So, if we look at when patients come in to see me, one of the conditions that they fear the most, even sometimes beyond cancer, is the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And now we know the rates of Alzheimer's for those over 50 is 1 in 5 for women and 1 in 10 for men. And yes, it's true, women have double the lifetime risk of Alzheimer's disease that men do. So, 26 years ago, we knew that it was a disease where the memory was starting to go, but we were still looking for the risk factors, and we still are now. But one of the things that wasn't discussed is that women have a greater chance of Alzheimer's than men. And this goes back to what I spoke about last week was about hormones and menstruation and more. So, in addition to the work I do with hormones, I see a lot of women that are menopausal. And one of the things that we know now, and luckily thanks to the work of Dr. Lisa Mosconi and many other neuroscientists, is that during the time of menopause, there are great changes to a woman's brain. It's actually a time of neuroplasticity and neuromodulation. So the brain is really, truly changing. So, in particular, she was able to look at, like this spring, she was able to research areas where there's estrogen receptors in the brain. So, in the early part of menopause, what happens is you start to have the areas of the brain that focus on hot flashes and sleep. But later in menopause, we start to see changes with cognition and memory. So, the ability to remember objects, the inability to focus. And so, a lot of this work now is trying to elucidate, is this part of the reasons why women have double the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease than men do? So I wish I'd known more then, but now in 2024, we have to begin to really look at this. We have to say, in particular, if you're a woman, what are the things that you can do now to try to help prevent Alzheimer's, because we know that we are at double the risk. And if you missed my webinar on Monday night, which I have the replays posted, but I spoke about some of these essential nutrients and vitamins that you need: vitamin D3, vitamin K2, and omega 3s. So if you missed it, please check it out, because those are essential to our health, metabolism, memory, and much, much more. So, then I'm going to talk about mental health. So, when I was in medical school, basically everything got assigned a disease. So, depression was a disease and you had a code for it. Anxiety was a disease and there was a code for it. Bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. But these diseases were seen to be in the brain. But now what we know is there's so many things that influence our brain. So Dr. Daniel Amen uses the term, he's a psychiatrist in America, that there's no mental illness, there's broken brains. So what does he mean by that? And what didn't we learn in medical school? Well, we didn't learn that if you don't have the essential nutrients that you need in your body, your brain is not going to function well. Neurotransmitters are made through our chemical reactions that happen, and we need these essential nutrients to assist with it. We also need a good functioning gut. And so now, the gut microbiome, which I spoke about last week, this is definitely evolving in terms of the practice of medicine. And if you don't understand what the microbiome means, you need to, because this, in the next 5 to 10 years, this is truly where medicine is going. Because what happens in the gut is going to affect the brain. And I've seen this time and time again, in particular with anxiety and depression, that when the gut is out of balance, we're going to have a lot more what's termed mental illness. And I think the reason I want to talk about mental health is so many people take mental health on themselves as they are broken. And people feel guilty because it's like, well, why do I have depression or anxiety? Why can't I snap out of it? And as someone who's suffered from anxiety before, and even to the point of palpitations and panic, it was for me, it was like, I'm in control, I'm a doctor, I'm doing all these right things, but what is going on? But I know now when I look back, I did have a lot of stress in my life, but I also had some bacteria that were out of balance in my gut, and that was also influencing my brain at that time. So something I wish I'd learned, and I'm learning lots and lots more now. So, what else do I wish I'd learned more about? The mitochondria. Now, when we go to med school, and even before that, we do biology classes in university, and we learn about these little cells that are in our body. They're very small, they're inside almost all our cells. But these mitochondria are the battery packs within our cells. And I remember seeing them in, my intro to biology course, and they were really cool. And, we spoke a little bit about them. But now, we know so many illnesses are associated with the mitochondria. So, fatigue, for example, there's something that's happening that's impacting the mitochondria. And what do we know now? Toxins can impact it. Things like mold, things like the gut being out of balance, which is why most cases of chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, they have a much greater root source. There's something else going on in the body. Again, this is just a default diagnosis, but there's underlying issues, and I truly believe it's mitochondria. So, what else really impacts the mitochondria? We know that light impacts it. And this is something we didn't learn in med school, but now we actually have a term. It's called photobiomodulation. And so we know that the energy that we get from the sun and also from light sources can impact our body and our cells, in particular, the mitochondria. So this is why if you're living in Canada and the northern climates, in the winter, there's people that get more prone to seasonal affective disorder as the day gets darker. And this is because our lack of sunlight that can happen. So this brings me also into circadian biology. Again, in med school, we didn't really talk about morning routines and evening routines. We didn't even really talk about when to take supplements or anything like that. But now we know that our body runs on a 24-hour clock. So Dr. Sachin Panda did a lot of work on this when it came regards to food. So he is one of the docs that first did the research looking at time restricted feeding, or what we now call intermittent fasting. But we know that when we eat early in the day and when we eat within a time block, our body does much better. And why is this? Because we have a 24-hour time clock. So for example, if you eat a lot just before you go to bed, or if you're a shift worker and eat a lot overnight, it's going to disrupt the rest of your rhythms. And that's because our bodies were designed to sleep when the sun goes down. And when we go to sleep, we're not meant to be digesting food. So when we go against nature, then we run into a lot of problems with our health. So this is circadian biology. What else didn't I learn? Toxins. We would talk a little bit about this in med school, maybe like lead or asbestos exposure, but now we have so much more that we're exposed to. And I think one of the greatest is pesticides. And this is something that we really brush over until we run into problems. So, one of the key pesticides I think that we see, especially in North America, is glycosates. And this also goes by the name of Roundup. It's sprayed on a lot of our food, it's sprayed on our wheat. So, there's a lot of people now thinking they have a gluten sensitivity, but actually, it can be a glyphosate sensitivity. And I've seen this with some of my patients, especially in Bermuda, that when they were in Europe, maybe in Italy, having bread or pasta, they didn't have the reactions that they would have to North American equivalent food. And that's because in the UK, you can't spray the glyphosates on the food. So this is completely overlooked in our medicine. And I think we do need to pay more attention to it. There is a lot more research going on, even within New Brunswick. There's a neurologist who's looking at the glyphosate exposures and how it can be linked to conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and other autoimmune diseases. And another big toxin exposure, which we really didn't have as much back in 1998, even into the 2000s, is electromagnetic frequency. So back then, I didn't have a cell phone. I think I got one in 2002 when I was on call. So that was just over 20 years ago. But now we have these devices that are everywhere, and people are putting them in their pocket on their in their coat. Men are putting them in their jeans pockets. But guess what? The frequencies that are emitted from these devices cause problems. We know that holding this close to your head is linked to a brain cancer called glioblastoma. We know for men, if you put this in your jeans pocket, you are going to have a reduced sperm count. So these are things we have to look at more closely. I have a patient that's very sensitive to EMFs. When her phone is at her bedside, she has migraines. So she has to take that phone away. And there's many other people that have that sensitivity. So something I didn't know, but we all have to be more aware and really learn more about it. And then the last thing I'll finish off today with is something called the placebo effect. So I did learn the placebo effect in med school, right? So what does it mean? So if you have a scientific study and they would give someone an antibiotic and then they would give another group of people a sugar pill. And so we were told that a lot of people, like sometimes up to 50% of people, can get better on the sugar pill. And we named it the placebo effect. And it was kind of left at that. And, this is over 10 years ago now, but I started when I was doing my own work of healing my body, of overcoming stress and anxiety. And I was beginning to look at what really is the placebo effect. The placebo effect is self-healing. So guess what? Science doesn't want to tell you that, but we can heal from the inside out. And this is what the placebo effect is. So how does that work? How could that possibly work? So we know that when within our body, within our brain, we have these wonderful chemical messengers. But there's a law in the brain called Hebb's law. And actually Hebb was a psychologist in Montreal at McGill University. And so what Hebb said and discovered, this was back in the 60s, I believe, was that circuits that fire together wire together. So what does it mean? It means where focus goes, energy flows. So we can change the thought patterns in our brain. What you were born with is not what you're stuck with, okay? If you were always a pessimist, you can become an optimist. That is your choice. But what you need to do is you need to set an intention and then you need to work toward it. So how does the placebo effect, why did it work? So in this research, patients were told, we're giving you this drug. It's really going to help you to overcome this problem. And in their mind, they believed it. So they began to wire down these positive circuits and they began to create more and more of these pathways of belief. They set the intention for healing. They took this pill every day. They believed it was giving a good response in their body. They taught their brain that, and the brain then said, okay, this is good for me. I'm going to send out all of the messengers to go about healing your body. And it worked. So the placebo effect works. It's our brain. This is truly the biology of belief. And now we know from a quantum healing perspective that things go much, much more, even out into the quantum field. This is why we see things like the power of prayer, how it can be beneficial because you're setting an intention for healing, and that's going out further and further into the quantum space. So again, another huge area to stay tuned for in terms of science and healing. If you really want to learn more right now about quantum healing, check out the program called Heart Math. This has a lot of information about how our heart truly is the center of our energy body. And also, as we start to tune into our heart and set a loving intention, we can send positive energy out into the field for healing. So I hope you enjoy some of these 7 things that I shared with you today. If anything resonates or you want to learn more about, please post them in the comments below. And before I leave, I just want to let you know that I'm excited to be starting next week my program, Dr. Tiffany's Inner Circle. So this comes about for my desire to give you more knowledge and education. As a physician that's been trained for 26 years with a background in nutrition, I feel that one of our things that's most lacking in our healthcare field now is education. And I love doing this. And so this is what I'm going to be doing every week, Tuesdays from 12 to 1. These are going to be lunchtime sessions. They'll be recorded if you miss any. There's going to be ways that you can ask questions directly to me in the sessions, or if you can't make it, you can even send me a note, and then I'll talk about the questions that you have. If I don't know the answers, I will do my best to research it for you. So that's going to be starting in December, and then in the new year, we're really going to be focusing on detox and basically going to be healing our gut in January. So if you want to join, just check some of my other posts, and I've got the links, and I'll post the link below for it. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, And until we meet again next time, have a wonderful day. Bye for now.